So welcome back to a part 2 of the how to J-hook tutorial videos. This one I'm just going to make short, sharp and simple on how to do two versions of landing that you'll see or do most commonly. One is J-hook and then two is just a front straight landing. The J-hook is better in most applications because you're a faster moving target and it means you can usually get to the ground a lot quicker and you can get into some tighter spots a lot quicker as well. Where the straight flat landing will be one we use in different applications like wide open spaces. You know there's no enemy threat around and you don't want to have to muck around with J-hooking. 9 times out of 10 though, you will J-hook because of those faster speeds, quicker landing, and it just looks a ton cooler. What I'll do is I'll give you a couple of tips and tricks that I do to be able to make sure that your J-hook can be as good as possible. You won't always land it every time depending on the area, how fast you're going, and exactly which helicopter you're using. But you'll be able to apply these tips to most of the helicopters. First thing you're going to do though is you're going to open your map and you're going to find an area that is best suited to land depending on your skill and what your commander and other squad leaders need. For here, I'm going to pick the south side of Lavender Farm. It's an open space and it's going to get your squad up there as quick as possible. One thing that you'll absolutely make sure that you're doing is when you're flying, you won't always line directly up with your move marker, just because that's for some reason how squad goes. What you'll always try and do is line up just on the left side of your move marker, because most people will J-hook to the right hand side because it's where you've got the most visibility. So you'll pick your spot, we're going to J-hook first, and I'll show you some tips and tricks and freeze it just before I make the J-hook to be able to tell you a couple of other things. Now remember, when flying, try not to fly too high altitude. It makes you a much bigger target and it means it takes longer to be able to actually get to the ground when you're trying to make that J-hook. Now, don't be afraid to use your mini-map as much as you need. It's going to allow you to be able to reference landmarks around you, as well as be able to sort of better understand where your landing zone is about to be. So we're about to perform the J-hook. As you can see, I'm about 100 meters away from my LZ. I'm slightly left of it. Speed doesn't really matter too much, and altitude not too much because it's going to be the same principle. But what you're about to see is I'm about to roll the helicopter to the right by moving my mouse to the right, and then I'm going to push the mouse forward, which is going to pitch the helicopter up, which puts it on its side and does that bit of a J-hook motion. That alone will not create the J-hook though. You also have to reduce your collective down to 0 so you stop getting any forward motion, and you're going to press D so that way it brings that tail rotor around so it really just flicks the back end of your helicopter. So as you can see, a lot happened just in those split couple of seconds. But now I'm halfway through the J-hook and you've seen just a second ago I increased my collective from 0 to about 44. What this does is it stops the helicopter from going in the direction you were originally facing before doing the J-hook and allows it to have a little bit more power now going back the other direction. And essentially it just stops you. What you'll then see is you'll see I'll quickly correct the helicopter to be able to be on an even plane. I don't want it facing too far forward. I don't want it back. I do not want to overcorrect. The helicopter will usually correct itself, but if you have to do large corrections, remember, do not overcorrect or under small motions. The next step is once you start to find that helicopter is slightly starting to correct, you're no longer shooting in the direction you were facing before the J-hook, and you've sort of slowed down a bit. You'll see that you'll reduce your collective to 0 so you can start dropping to the ground. You won't permanently keep it at 0, you'll just do this to really just start getting some of that height reduced to be able to try and hit the ground as quick as possible. What you're about to see though is that I will not keep it there for long. I'll then shoot the collective back up to around about 40. Hovering in helicopters is normally between about 42 to 44, so anything below this will keep you going towards the ground, but just how fast is going to be depending on your situation. You do not want to hit the ground with too much force, otherwise you can damage your helicopter significantly or blow it up in worst case. Now, keeping in mind, You will not land this every single time. There will be times where you will either overcorrect, undercorrect, or hit the ground a little bit. Does not matter. It is not always something that you will perfect every single time. Different elements take into effect, like exactly where the landing zone is or whether or not you're being shot at the time. Just do your best to be able to master it as long as you do not blow up, destroy the tail rotor, or destroy any other components of the helicopter and it is flyable, then you're all good. Next up, we're going to show you how to just do a front flat landing. Now we go for our straight flat landing. Same principles apply as before. Stay low, reference your mini-map. Now like I said, this move I actually find harder in tighter spaces, hence why I barely use it, but it has its places. Don't be afraid to use it, mix and match, keep things interesting. So what you can see I'm about to do is I'm about 500 meters from the LZ and I've reduced my collective right down and I've tried to level the helicopter out. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to stay nice and even, slowly reduce altitude and slowly start to reduce my speed. So you can see I'm playing around a little bit with the collective and with the pitch of my helicopter, trying to increase and decrease depending on how fast I'm going, any terrain around me, making sure that I don't just drop too hard. If you find that you are, increase the collective a little bit and increase the pitch upwards a little bit too. So as you can see, I've almost finished my landing and my helicopter comes to quite a standstill. This is what catches off a lot of people because all of your motion has stopped and now you need to try and correct the helicopter to do a nice smooth landing without accidentally overcorrecting and either going too far forwards or too far back. This is a bit of a skill to get used to, so definitely something you want to practice. Remember to keep an eye on your collective as well. You don't want to increase it so much that you start gaining altitude, and you don't want to decrease it so much that you decrease altitude to the point of hitting the ground too hard and damaging the helicopter, or just flat out crashing it. Now that you've seen the two main landings that you will either do or see within the squad of the game, try and master those skills in Jensen's training range before jumping into a public match. That way you don't accidentally piss off your entire 9-man squad or your entire team by being an inexperienced pilot, trying to do a J-hook and just bombing it into the ground. But once you've mastered those skills, it is definitely something that can turn a game. Once you have an extremely experienced helicopter pilot that can get troops in and out of a location to the front lines or behind enemy lines to be able to drop off troops or build habs, it can really turn the tides of the game. But as always, like, share and subscribe to the channel if you like seeing these types of videos and all the other content that we bring for the community back to the community. But until then, enjoy.